Hi everyone, welcome back to Total War Therapy, and today we're gonna explain every single attribute in Total War Warhammer 3. Tides of Torment is approaching, so please, a creative assembly, consider to give me the partnership. And let's begin. Hi, I'm Alberto, I'm a real person, and here you will find the beginner's guide, the battle unit roster, tier list, ranking, and many shorts. So if you wanna support the channel, please consider to subscribe. Let's start with one of the most popular attributes in this game. I'm talking about the Cozy Sphere and the Cozy Terror, that is mostly present in monsters, in beast. The little monsters and the beast get the Cozy Sphere, while the colossal giant monsters got the Cozy Terror that includes the Cozy Sphere. Now, the Cozy Sphere basically is a reduction, is a penalty to the enemies nearby that will reduce the leadership of 8 points. And of course, these units that cause fear, they are immune to fear itself. While the cause terror, have to say that is not explained that well by the game. Okay, we have just an idea that there is this chance that of course depends of the leadership of the enemy and other stats, that the enemy that you are attacking with your unit that causes terror, that is a giant monster, will terrorize the supposed unit till the point that they will run away and leave the battlefield. And of course, this unit that cause terror are immune both to fear and terror. Now, if you're playing against a unit that cause fear, terror, you have to be aware of that, and you have to keep, for example, a lord, a hero in the nearby to encourage, to give a bonus of leadership. Or, I mean, it's better in any case to take care of this monster with more units that can help each other, they can provide the bonus to each other. While if you have a unit that causes fear and terror, you will have basically a monster that will terrorize the enemy units, so you will have a chance to penetrate inside the army formation of the enemy and attack the more vulnerable units. Now let's address all together the charge defense versus large, the charge reflection, and the expert charge defense, because they are all strictly linked. They are mostly present in units of lancers, spearmen, and so on, because they are supposed to deal with anti-large units. Let's start with the charge defense. Basically, when your infantry is bracing, and you will see the symbol of the shield on the bar at the bottom of your screen, when they are bracing, and for example a cavalry unit is it's important, a large unit, not an infantry with a good charge bonus. No, a cavalry, a large unit, a monster, a cavalry, a mounted characters, and so on. When they are charging towards you in the front, and you are not moving, okay, if you are moving, you will not have this charge defense anymore. You have to be in the bracing stance, so you have to stand still. In this case, you will negate at the front the charge of this large attacker. The charge reflection that generally comes along the charge defense means that that your units will deal an additional damage to the charging enemy. Okay, if the enemy is charging with this power will be kind of used against itself, and it will cause damage to that. So if you see like a cavalry charging your unit of spearmen, and the cavalry is getting more damage than the spearmen, means that there is also the charge reflection. And then at the end there is the expert charge defense that take everything that I already said, but this counts even against some the infantry. Okay, not only the large units, but even the infantry units. And keep in mind that some characters or some units like the Wrathmongers, for example, they are very hard hitting with their charge. So when they hit you, you will not negate with the basic charge defense versus large their charge, but it will still cost you a lot of damage. So with the expert charge defense, you will be protected even by them. Now, you have to remember, as I said, that when they attack you from the flanks or from the back, or if you are moving while they are charging you, all the things that we said, they don't make sense. Okay, you will not negate the charge, you will not reflect the damage, and so on. So remember to brace and to position the unit in front of the enemy unit that is charging. Okay, this is a large category that includes all the constructs, the demons, the fire demons, the elemental units, and the undead. What they have all in common? First, they are immune to fear and terror that we already talked about, so if there is a monster attacking them, they just don't care. And second, that more important, they don't, there are many differences linked to the factions and so on, but what is very, very important is that they will not rout, they will not wave when the leadership is broken. So it's not like with the other units that at some point they will run away when they lose the leadership. They will not run away, but they will start to cause damage to themselves. And this is different because for the construct, for example, is crumbling and disintegrated. For the demons is the demonic instability, and then they get banished and so on. But yeah, basically you will not have the problem that they run away, but they will cause damage to themselves, and they will at some point they will fall by themselves. This it can be problematic. You have to keep this into consideration if you're playing with a faction that have units like that can be an undead faction, a chaos demonic factions, or the Tomb Kings with the constructs and so on, because you can lose very easily these units. If you lose the control of them, you don't keep track of how they're doing, and you don't babysit them. At some point they may lose enough leadership to just banish themselves without the enemy doing nothing. So be very, very careful of this stuff. Okay, in very short, all the flying units will have the can fly attribute, and then there are some particular units that cannot land and attack the units on the ground, that they will have the always flying attribute. Now let's talk about the hide in the forest and the Vanguard deployment together, just because I think that I can give you a better explanation if I talk about them at the same time. First, the hide in the forest. If you see in the map that there is a forest or a wood, you can hide this unit that will not be seen by the enemy army. Okay, now be careful, because sometimes you can think that your unit is inside the forest, but actually is out of that. So always check if there is the symbol of hiding over the unit in the panel. Otherwise, you can never know. You think that there are some trees, but for the game, actually, these are not trees. Just remember that. And then we have the Vanguard deployment. Vanguard deployment means that before the battle begins, you can deploy this unit out of your deployment area, but out as well of the deployment area of your enemy. So in the area, that can be just in the middle, or maybe in some maps even at the back of the deployment area of your enemy. How can you use this? Because if you can hide these units in the forest, this can help you a lot, because while the enemy is approaching towards you, you can move this unit out of the forest and you can attack at the back of the enemy. We can say that is not that essential, because you can find another strategy just to hide your unit in a forest in your deployment area and then attack at the right time. But it's nice to have this attribute, and in some cases is a way to use this unit to attack first, to hit very hard some artillery pieces, and that can be dangerous for your army before it's too late and so on. Now let's talk about the Stalk and the Sniper attribute. The Stalk is the more important and is present in many different factions. Basically is the ability of the unit to move hidden in any terrain. That means that if you don't get enough close to the enemy, they will not spot you. So think about having a hiding in the forest, but wherever in the map. You have just to, don't be that close to to the enemy. This is very nice because you can plan a lot of stealthy tactics. You can attack at the back of your enemy when they less expected, or you can attack directly very vulnerable but dangerous units like spellcaster, artillery pieces, and so on. This is a very expensive attribute, so believe me, take advantage of that. Don't ignore it. Okay, if you have a unit with that, but like some rangers of the dwarves, but you still want to deploy them in your second line, don't do it. You can make a better use of them. And then there is the Snipe. The Snipe can be together with the Stalk or not. There are, for example, some units that have only the Snipe. For example, the Auckland Rifleman of the Empire. I don't remember if this is the correct name. Sorry. In any case, that means that when you are hidden in a forest, your firing will not be detected by the enemy, so you can shoot at the enemy without them noticing. I mean, they will notice that they are losing hit points, but they don't know from where. They don't know what's happening. But if you have the Stalk and the Snipe together, you can just move the unit wherever you want. It will be hidden and fire. But if you have only the Snipe, you have to hide very well your unit, even because these units only with the Snipe, they're actually not that defensive or stubborn. Now let's talk about the charge attributes, for example the Devastating Flanker, the Glorious Charge, and the Ogre Charge. Let's start with the Devastating Flanker. Devastating Flanker means that when a unit with this attribute will charge the enemy at the flank or at the back of the enemy, they will have the double of the charge bonus. Okay, if they attack at the front, they will have just the normal bonus, but if they attack at the flank or at the back, they will have the double of the charge bonus. This is mostly present in the Slaanesh and some other faction, but very few actually. And I mean, it can be quite powerful. It's a way to tell you to play, for example, the hammer and anvil strategy. So you keep busy the enemy front line, and then you charge at the back or at the flanks with your chariots, cavalry, and then with your demonettes. Then we have the Glorious Charge that it's quite rare, we can say. And basically, when you're charging an enemy, the charge duration will be doubled, and the enemy units will take a leadership penalty if they are attacked in the flank, and probably is not mentioned, but even in the back. So we can just say you will have an enhanced charge bonus. And then there is the Ogre Charge that I decided to put it here because it's very present in the Ogre Kingdoms faction. I think most of the units got it, and basically means that when they are attacking a unit that is bracing with anti-charge attribute that we already addressed, like the charge defense, the charge reflection, and so on, these bonuses of your enemy will lose half of their they will lose half of their effect. That means that your Ogre Charge will not be completed, negated, but just half of that. So you will still charge the unit with no problem. So be careful, of course, but we can say that the Ogre will have an easier time with the charging negating units. Now let's talk about the shields attribute, for example the Directional Shield, the 360 missile block, and the ballistic plating. Let's start with the Directional Shield. Basically the unit with this attribute will not only have the shield that basically it works only in the front. Okay, if you are shooting with your arrows at the enemy with the shield will protect the unit only if you're attacking at the front. But if you shoot the arrow at the same enemy but at its flank, they will take the damage like it's supposed to be. But with the Directional Shield you will have some bonuses even at the side of the 50% and at the back with just 1/10%. So be careful, of course, of this of these statistics, because it means that if you are fighting against a unit like that, most of missile units, I mean, unless you're attacking at the very back, will be useless. And if you have a unit like that, you will be far more protected by missile, but it's still better to, you know, give the front to them. Then there is the 360 missile block. This basically is the same, but the shield in this way works 100% with, I mean, from all the directions. And then the ballistic plating, that means that the projectiles will be deflected, even the cannonballs. This happen even with some units that don't have the attribute, but it just happens. And this will cause damage to the enemies nearby. Now let's talk about the attributes that increase the magical power of your army. First, the mastery of elemental winds. That is present in many factions, and basically when in an army, that is something that I don't suggest, you get more spellcasters, their, we can say, the power of the spells will be increased by the 15%. Now, honestly, I don't like to have more than one spellcaster in my army, but for example in Grand Cathay, that I mean, almost every hero is a spellcaster or lord, it will happen this. So yeah, in this case, yes, it can be nice, just a little increase. They could have added more. And then there is the spell mastery, that is just how adept this unit is at casting spells. Now let's talk about the siege attributes, the siege attacker and the Wallbreaker. Let's start with the siege attacker. Basically, when you attack a fortress, a fortified settlement, so with the walls, you will not be able to start the fight directly if you don't possess a unit with the siege attacker, and you will need to build some siege machines. But if you have at least one unit with the siege attacker, your army will be instantly able to attack the fortress. This attribute is possessed by artillery pieces, monsters, and some characters that, I mean, just of some unit that can, you know, in the lore, in the concept, actually able to hit the fortress. And then we have the Wallbreaker, that is possessed by monsters and Ogre, mostly, but even some other characters and stuff just lately. And basically means that this unit, they don't need to attack the gate to enter into the fortress, but they can even just attack the wall, and they will have an additional damage to, you know, against the buildings. Like some monster, okay, they basically don't need to think about the Toad Dragon, that I think was the first monster with that got introduced with this attribute, and he even got an animation for that. He doesn't need to attack directly the gate just to go in, but he can attack the wall of the fortress and go inside anyway. Now let's talk about the marks of the Chaos Gods, that basically are attributes possessed by the warriors of Chaos that are not demons, but they still get, we can say, the blessing of their own monogods. And they work in the same way, but at the end they are different. For example, there is the mark of Tzeentch when you get the barrier, that is these magical shields that will absorb the first damage that you will take, and then the magical attacks, that is very good about units that have the physical resistance. Then we have the mark of Khorne, that will give you the frenzy ability, that will increases your stats when you have more than 50% of your leadership. Some spell resistance of 35%, because Khorne reportedly hates magic. Some increased armor and less melee defense, because, you know, they are more offensive, we can say. Then there is the mark of Nurgle, that they give you the contact effect of the poison that reduce the speed and the weapon strength of the enemies. They will have more hit points, because Nurgle is the god of life, and more melee defense, sacrificing some attack, like for Khorne, because they are more resilient but less offensive. And then at the end, the mark of Slaanesh, that will give you the immunity to psychology, so you will not be scared by monsters that cause fear and terror. The Strider attribute, so you will be able to move across the battlefield with no terrain penalties if you are going, upward a hill you're in the water and so on. And then the physical resistance of 5%, it is quite little, and an increased speed of 5%. Now let's have a quick trip in Bretonnia, where there are the peasants and the knights that they have some we can say some attributes that are linked to each other. The peasants, that basically they gain an increased leadership if there is a unit with the knight attribute nearby, and the knight that will not be affected by the peasants routing or wavering. So when the peasants have a reduction of their leadership, this will not cause any trouble in the knights. And at the same time, having a knight nearby an army of peasant can help with their leadership. Kinda same is with the Skink and the Kroxigor in the Leaderman roster. The Skink, when you are nearby a unit of Kroxigor, they will cause fear, and because people know that there will be the big brother just at their back, and the Kroxigor will have an increased weapon strength because as a big brother they have to protect their little brother. This is very nice, very very lawful, and I like that. It makes you it kind of incentivates you to build an army made of Skinks and Kroxigor. That is something that I do in any campaign with the Leaderman. Now we can talk about dwarves together, because there are the Slayers in the dwarves roster that they will get the Slayers attribute. That basically means that the weapon strength will never be reduced during a battle. So all the abilities and spells that reduce the weapon strength of the units will not affect the Slayers. And then the Contempt of the Chaos Dwarves, that I took a little to understand what it meant, when it was actually meaning something very easy, very simple. That is that the unit with the Contempt will not be affected by unit without the Contempt wavering or routing. So if there are some hobgoblins that they don't have the Contempt attribute, it's like the Expendable stuff, but in a different way. So this unit will not be affected by the hobgoblins routing, because they don't have the Contempting attribute like the Chaos Dwarf. Cannot run. This is an attribute present in most of the fields artilleries in the game, and basically means that this particular unit cannot run together with the rest of your army, and you have to keep this into consideration when you are moving the entire army all together, because this unit will be slower, and at some point they can be vulnerable to enemies' attack because they are left alone. So always remember to keep some units close to them to defend them, even if you have to slow down their path. The Encourage ability is present in most of the lords and heroes, all the characters of the game, and basically is this aura that you can see if you click on the character, that grants an additional leadership bonus to all the allies in this area. And this may not be that important in faction like the High Elves, the Dwarves that reportedly have a high leadership, but with the faction like the Skaven or the Demons, that when they start to lose leadership, they will crumble, they will vanish, they will die in short. In this case, having nearby a lord, a hero, a character that will grant this additional leadership is a very powerful move. And remember that, okay, when you're playing with this kind of armies, always keep a hero. If you have 3 heroes, just deploy them in the way that all the units of your army will be covered by this aura, by the aura of one of the 3 characters in this example. But believe me, it's very important, and you can upgrade it with the skill trees. Executioner. This ability is possessed by, I think, just 4 or 5 characters in the entire game, and basically means that when you attack with this unit an enemy with below the 20% of the hit points, you will kill this enemy instantly. It's very powerful, especially with the character, and luckily, it's possessed by very few units. Expendable. This is a very important attribute in some particular faction, and we will take as an example the Skaven. Basically, what expendable means. There are some very low tier units, mostly infantry, that when they suffer a lack of leadership, sorry, it's my dog, a lack of leadership of their route, they will cause a penalty to all the units nearby. But with expendable attribute, they will cause this penalty only to the other units with the expendable attribute. What does it mean? That the more elite troops that in the Skaven roster are the clan rats or the lords will not be affected by seeing these expendable units routing. So it's something just not relevant for them. Why a lord of the horned rat should care about these Skaven slaves leaving the battlefield. And this is very important because you know that you have at your disposal a mid shield of a unit that whatever happens to them will not affect the rest of your army. Fire whilst moving. This attribute is present in different missile infantry and missile cavalry that generally are the more skirmish ones, because you can use them to keep firing, keep shooting their arrows or with their rifles, with their pistols to the enemy while they are moving, so keeping a distance between them and the enemy that is chasing them. Or in any case, you can use them in a more mobile way because they don't need to stand still to aim at the target, but they can just move around. I think, after I played very many thousands of hours with this game, I feel that probably they lack some accuracy when they fire whilst moving, but it can be nice because you can use them with the more dynamics, strategies and tactics, and they can always be helpful to annoy the enemy and to disrupt the enemy formation. Formation attack. Now, honestly, I think that this attribute is present in many units, but is mentioned only in few of them. Basically, you will see that when a unit attack, for example, an infantry unit attacks another infantry units, there are two different things that can happen that to the defensive unit. One is that all the units of all the entities of this unit, they move forward, so they go to attack the enemy, or they just stand still and they wait for their turn to fight. And this is very helpful in the defensive strategy because the enemy will not attack all your entities in the same moment, but they have to proceed little by little because the entities will keep a distance between them and they will not break this formation when attacked. And yeah, we can see this in some units, but actually it's present in more units than you can imagine. Immune to contact effects. This is another very rare ability. I don't even remember which character possesses it by default. In any case, means that when you attack, when you fight with an enemy that has a contact effect, and you can see this next to the melee attack of the unit card, it can be the poison, it can be the frostbite, or many other. This unit of yours will not be affected by this poison, frostbite, and so on, making the unit more resilient. Immune to flanking. This ability is present mostly in some monsters and some war machines, and basically means that when an enemy is charging at your flank, so is supposed to get an additional bonus because it's attacking you not in the front but in the flank. In this case, your unit will not suffer this penalty, so it will be like if it's being attacked at the front. Of course, this doesn't mean that they don't suffer the penalty of charging. Okay, the charge bonus will still be there, but just they will not be the additional penalty that the enemy is charging them into the flanks. Immune to psychology we already mentioned before, and in short means that this unit are not vulnerable to the fear and terror attribute that is possessed by most of beasts and monsters in this game, and even some characters that are particularly dangerous. So you can send the unit with this attribute against the monster without worrying that at some point they will lose leadership and route. But attention, I'm not saying that they cannot lose their leadership en route. This can happen for many factors, for the lack of hit points, or for other factors in the game. But it will not be caused by the fear and terror caused by a monster. Perfect Vigour. This is a very important attribute that has been underestimated for many years because in the game it was not shown what was causing the fatigue to your units, but basically means that it doesn't matter how long your unit is fighting, he's running, he's doing stuff, he will not suffer the penalties caused by the fatigue. That will affect all the other units. Okay, the more a unit is fighting or running, the more its own stats that can be attack, it can be speed, leadership will be affected by that, and they will be lower. But if the unit gets the perfect vigor, will not suffer that. So it will always be always fresh and always ready to fight with the most of its strength. So keep in mind that the unit with this attribute are the more resilient, and you don't need them to rest for a while during a long combat. Rampage. In this game there are some feral beasts and monsters that can have a version with the mount, with the characters that in this case will be tamed, but the not tamed ones will suffer of Rampage, the feral, the wildest, and basically that means that when they lose first the 20% of the hit points and then the 70% of their hit points, they will, if they have an enemy within the range of a certain distance, they will attack this enemy, or they will, if there is no enemy around, they will move randomly across the map. Now, this is a very dangerous attribute for you, not for the enemy, because if your unit, your monster, that being feral sometimes means that they have less armor than the tamed counterpart, and if they lose the 75% of their health in their rampage, they will attack the enemy that probably was destroying them. That can be a unit of spearmen, a character that is specialized against large units, and in this case, it's done. Okay, there is no way to save him. That's why you have to be very, very careful of these things, and when your monster rampage and it is in a situation that can be dangerous for it, you should keep some units around them, or get some abilities in your of your characters that can they can stop the rampage and just bring the beast again to your control. Silenced. This is not an ability that you possess by default, but the enemies can give it to you. And it's very powerful because if it addresses a character and a spellcaster especially, this character, this Lord Hero, will not be able to cast the spells and to activate its own abilities. And believe me, it's terrible, because a spellcaster that is not capable of using the spells, what is doing there? So if you see that there is an enemy unit that can cause this to you, you have to keep it, as far as possible from your spellcaster, from your characters, or to take him down as soon as possible, so in this way you can use your spells without worrying that much. The Strider. Basically, you can notice that the maps of Total War Warhammer are not flat. There can be hills, there can be, forest, lakes, and with this ability, your unit will not be affected by all the different terrains. For example, if there is a hills and you are moving upward, in this case you will be slowed down, okay, by the terrain. And even if an enemy attack you from from the top to the bottom, you're in the bottom, the enemy in the top, and they attack you, they will have a bonus against you. All these things don't matter anymore if you have the Strider ability. Normally is present in the most mobile units in your faction, in your roster, making them able, to move across the map without worrying of the hills, of the water, of the forest, and so on. This is very great, even if you may not notice. And they can attack, if there is a hills, if there is the water, they can just attack without worrying to suffer any penalty. Unbreakable. This is the most annoying attribute if you are playing against a unit that possesses it. Basically means that this unit will always have the most of the leadership. They will never suffer any loss or lack of leadership. They will never rout. And this is crazy because if you are fighting against this unit, you know that you have to hit, you have to take down until the last entity, otherwise they will never leave the battlefield. And if you're playing with a unit that possesses this attribute, he can be, even in this case, a little problematic, because the game warns you when there is a unit that is routing, that is wavering. But if they are unbreakable, you will never know. So it can happen that this unit will be annihilated by the enemy and you will not notice, okay, because the game will not tell you. That's why you have to be careful. But in any case, it's very good because you don't have to worry about the leadership of this unit. They will stand still no matter what. They will absorb any attack and they will fight back. So yeah, if you need a wall, this is the best attribute for you. Unyielding Assault. Even this is a very rare ability that now I cannot even mention. I think, yes, some Bloodletters have something like that in some particular factions. In any case, it means that they cannot have their melee attack reduced during the battle by, of course, all the the abilities or the spells of the enemy. The Woodsman ability, basically this literally means that your unit will be able to pass through the trees. If you look carefully in the game, most of the infantry, for example, they just dodge the trees when they cross a forest, and this can slow down them a lot. Even if, they are supposed to have a bonus compared to big monsters in the forest. But this unit will be able just, to trespass the trees like if they are not made of physical substance, and very funny. And in any case, they will have some bonuses linked to being in the forest in most of cases. That is particularly good for some monsters that possess the attribute, because they will not suffer the penalties of being into the wood. Thank you for following me, and see you very, very soon.